Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome one more time to the Pilates Goddess podcast. This is your host, Lynda Lippin, and today we are going to be discussing bridging to classical Pilates. So this episode is mostly for the Pilates teachers in my audience, but there may be some, nuggets in here that are interesting for Pilates clients and, people who go to Pilates studios as well. So before we get started on our discussion today, I wanted to talk to you about my fabulous new morning coffee routine. Now, you guys who know me and have known me for a while know that I love my coffee. Love, love, love. And I drink an entire large French press of coffee every single day. That's 3 nice cups. And while I generally drink my coffee black with maybe a little monk fruit sweetener, I do enjoy a nice, creamy, kind of foamy cup of coffee. And when I'm out, that's usually what I'll order. So, and I'm also into getting as many kind of superfoods and anti-inflammatories and good things into my body as possible. And if I can put some of that in my coffee and get that done first thing in my day, why not? So a few weeks ago, I was introduced to Laird Superfoods. And if you remember Laird Hamilton, the big wave surfer, he, like me, started experimenting with, putting great superfoods into his morning coffee and came up with a creamer and a blend and other things that were so good that he started a company and started selling these products. It's a coconut oil and coconut sugar based product, okay? Non-GMO, all the good things, and really good for you. Now, I use the cocoa version because I like a little bit of dark chocolate flavor in my coffee when I can. And just a scoop or two of that in my coffee in the morning, and I froth it. I drink it for my first cup. It really sets me up for the day, tastes great, and kind of fills me up a little bit and gives me a little bit of more energy. And I think these are things that we could all use. So we're looking at better ingredients, we're looking at high quality, plant-based, and of course, US sourced whenever possible. So are you ready to feel more energized, focused, and supported? Then go over to lairdsuperfood.com/goddess and add nourishing plant-based foods to fuel you from sunrise to sunset. Use our promo code goddess at checkout and save 15% off your purchase today. And yes, I just ordered actually some more of that creamer for myself because I like it that much. So let's kind of segue into talking about bridging to classical Pilates. I've been asked a lot lately in my Pilates teacher mastermind group on Facebook about teaching or learning how to teach classical Pilates. There are a whole lot of Pilates teachers in the world, let alone in the United States, who have really not learned the Pilates method as Joe and his teachers learned it and taught it. And while I don't have a problem with that, actually. I mean, you can be teaching perfectly good work and probably teaching a lot of the classical Pilates exercises from contemporary programs. And I myself have taught both, have taught teacher training in both, and have been trained in both. But I have found after 34 years of teaching that it is the classical Pilates part of my training that makes teaching easier. That's right, my friends, makes teaching easier. So sometimes if you've been, through an entire Pilates teacher training and you've spent the thousands and thousands of dollars and the hundreds of hours, the last thing you want to do is go through another training. And in a way, the last thing you want to hear is that you may not have gotten the complete picture of Pilates from the training that you did. So we're going to start out with a few things to look for generally in a Pilates teacher training program. Okay. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've seen in terms of the differences between contemporary trained teachers and more classically trained teachers. And then I'll talk about how you can pretty easily actually learn what you need to learn and bridge these things together in a way that will serve you, serve your business, serve your clients, right? Because that's really what it's all about in the end. So if you are, first of all, somebody who's still looking at a Pilates teacher training program, here are some things to think about. And I've talked about this before. I actually have an episode called, So You Want to Teach Pilates? Number one, you need to think about where you have enjoyed doing Pilates. Okay, so a lot of people now come into wanting to teach Pilates because they've had a great experience doing Pilates, for their own bodies. And that, in fact, is how, the Pilates business got started, was people would go to Joe, feel better, do better, and then, start kind of apprenticing and teaching. And in fact, when I first started doing Pilates and teaching Pilates, there were no comprehensive certification programs, really. I mean, I think, Romana might have had one at the Pilates studio in New York, at Drago's, but really, other than that, there weren't any. And then I was a founding member of the Physical Mind Institute, which was then the Institute for the Pilates Method in the early 90s. And we started doing comprehensive, teacher trainings. And of course, now, every Pilates equipment manufacturer runs their own teacher trainings. There's just tons. And in a way, it was the lawsuit here in the US over using the word Pilates that enabled this kind of separation of Pilates into different camps and into different ways of approaching the work. So if you are, number one, really happy with the studio you're going to, and I mean really happy, okay? Don't just decide on the basis of one class. Don't just decide on the basis of one teacher. Okay, if you're looking to train there, take classes or privates with all of the lead trainers. Take classes or privates with the program director. Look at all of the reviews of the program, okay? This may require you to be on Reddit and look at Google reviews and possibly even Yelp and places like that. And even though a lot of times, as we know, people will leave bad reviews before they leave good reviews. In other words, when something sucks, it's kind of in the front of your brain and you rant about it. Those are actually the reviews that you want to see. There's a new Instagram account. This is just an aside that is actually starting to share people's teacher training experiences, and some of them are pretty horrible. People being shamed in classes, people being put through sessions by trainers, who are supposedly their lead trainers, being injured, people who are asked to review the program before they're done with the program so that, if you don't want to leave a bad review, because then you worry that that might adversely affect your test out and, how people deal with you in the studio. And, there's just a whole load of crap there that you don't really want to deal with. So talk to people, interview people, and then also watch the apprentices in the studio and watch the new teachers who have gone through the program. Okay. Are they getting booked? Are they teaching good sessions? Do they know what they're doing? Are they feeling supported? There's a lot that goes in to learning to teach Pilates. And it's not just knowing the exercises and remembering the exercises. And you're going to need some support for yourself on many levels. And you want to make sure that your program is able to offer you that kind of support. Even in my free Pilates Teacher Mastermind group on Facebook and in some other Pilates teacher groups that I'm in, I read stories every day about teachers who started teacher training programs, but they don't have enough hours in the studio where they're doing their training to be able to finish. So they're looking for outside studios to be able to get their observation and student teaching hours. I mean, places where they just don't have enough availability on the floor for teachers to get their hours in. Studios where they don't want the trainees actually teaching on the floor in front of their current clients and other people. Just, you would think you pay, high 4 to 5 figures for a teacher training program, and they want you there and they want you there all the time. And you would think they would want you to be successful because your success is tied to their name and their program. So when I read things like this, I'm frankly kind of horrified, absolutely horrified. Because when I had my own brick and mortar studios and I was hosting teacher training and doing full teacher training for the Physical Mind Institute, I had people, traveling to me. I was in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I had people traveling from Pittsburgh. I had people traveling from New York. I had people traveling many, many hours to do the trainings with me. And frankly, if I couldn't find student teachers or student clients for them to teach, I took sessions myself. I had the other teachers in the studio taking sessions. I had some of my current clients who were healthy take some sessions and classes. I made sure that people got the hours that they needed of teaching and of observed teaching. And nowadays with Zoom, there's really no excuse because you could do observed teaching online. I can sit at my computer and watch you teach a session online and have that count as an observation session, right? So, make sure that all of those things are in place. Number 2, think about where it is that you might want to work after you graduate. So, for example, if you have always gone to one Pilates studio and that is really, and you kind of want to stay with that Pilates studio, then, and you might want to work there, make sure that there is a path for the apprentices to work within the studio. And again, talk to the people who are working there. not just their client facing face, right? But talk to them about what's going on in the studio behind the scenes and just make sure that it's a place you want to be. If you go to a chain studio or you go to a big box gym studio, again, you want to think, is this the environment where I want to work? And if it is, then for sure take that training. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is, I do hiring for a studio in Bermuda. I do hiring for Como Shambhala Pilates studios in the world. I do hiring for studios who have very specific requirements about what they would like out of a teacher. And there's a few things that really everyone's looking for. Number one, a comprehensive certification. This isn't just mat or just mat and reformer or just mat and reformer and chair, but this is comprehensive. If you ever consider working out of the country, if you ever consider traveling and teaching, covering for people when they need somebody, whatever that looks like for you, you need to be comprehensively trained. And there are a lot of places in the world, and there are a lot of studios that will tell you that you will be eminently hireable just knowing mat and reformer. And, when I'm in hiring mode and I get these teachers where I'm very clear in my postings online, comprehensively certified, 5 years of experience, can be classical or contemporary, I inevitably get a whole host of CVs from teachers who only have mat and reformer, but were under the impression that that is comprehensively certified, and it's not. You can't just know those things and then attempt to teach yourself the rest of it and then take a job saying that you're comprehensively certified. Okay, it doesn't work that way. So if you can, I recommend, if you're going to separate things at all, do a mat certification on its own, if that's what you need to do. But then once you're looking at the apparatus, go into a comprehensive program. It's really worthwhile, I think, for your future. You also want to make sure, okay, what the lineage of the head of your program is. Just make sure that they have some like standing in the world of Pilates, whatever that looks like, whether it's more contemporary, whether it's classical, whichever. And also, look at trainings that set you up for teaching on all kinds of equipment, even if they're a teacher training program that's tied to an equipment manufacturer. Here's where things, can get a little kind of fishy, I think, is you have equipment manufacturers that then run Pilates teacher training programs. And so you get kind of trained specific to that brand of apparatus. That will not serve you well if you want to teach in a studio with a different brand of apparatus. And even though a comprehensively trained Pilates teacher could be easily sort of shown a few new routines and maybe retrained to teach in a megaformer studio in an SLT or a place like that if you wanted to, could learn to teach on different brands of Pilates apparatus because, once you kind of know what you're doing, you can feel out the spring resistance and straps and things like that. It doesn't work the other way around. So if you've only been trained on a megaformer or you've only been trained for and to a specific brand of equipment, it is going to make it more difficult for you to then get hired in a full-on Pilates studio. And again, A lot of those teacher training programs will not tell you that. So I've had interesting interactions with teachers who are like, who have literally come back to me kind of horrified and maybe a little snotty and said things like, I'm well aware that the megaformer isn't classical Pilates, but I know enough of it. Or I'm well aware that the megaformer is not a universal reformer and isn't really Pilates equipment, but I'm sure I could figure it out. No, no, that's not how the hiring process works. No one is going to hire you to hopefully just figure it out. Okay, so just know that. Now, it's always, always, always important if you aren't sure that you do some research and ask around. But here's a great thing. If you have been through a comprehensive, more contemporary Pilates teacher training program, there's a good chance that you have been taught a whole lot of exercises and variations and things that are actually not part of the Joseph Pilates system. So, for example, if your manual for mat had a whole section on tabletop and had a whole section on side lying, clams, and leg lifts and different things to do there, those are not part of the actual Joseph Pilates mat. Yeah, we teach pre-Pilates. There's knee folds, there's things that we do, but there's probably entire sections of your teacher training that you don't really necessarily need. And this is why I always encourage people to learn the Pilates system first. And then if you want to go off and I think it's easier to go off and then learn contemporary things if you want to learn them than it is to necessarily learn all the new stuff that they throw into contemporary programs and then try to come back to classical. Now, bridging into teaching classical Pilates can look very different depending on who you talk to. Some folks will tell you that you need to go through a whole second training. In other words, you need to do a whole second apprenticeship. And you need to be in a classical studio with Gratz or Pilates Designs equipment and really absorb it. And that, in fact, is one way to go. And if you have the time and the money and the energy to do that, go for it. Another way is to find a mentor, and I do this work and I do it online, is find a mentor who has some programs where they understand the kind of stuff that you learned in your contemporary training, and they respect everything that you learned in your contemporary training. And all they want to do is hone it down to what is actually Pilates historically. So I'm going to say that again. If you have a contemporary training, you might want to find a mentor or a program, right? Or a subscription that you can join online that will allow you to kind of come in with the background that you have that be respected and acknowledged, and then build from that background out the classical series and why it is what it is. Because a lot of times contemporary programs, and I did this in the past, so I'm totally guilty of this, will denigrate classical Pilates, right? They'll say, well, they're always doing the same thing and it gets boring, or they're always working in a posterior pelvic tilt and flat back, or they're always whatever. That's all bullshit. Classical Pilates teachers work with a neutral pelvis, even though they don't call it that. They work through body mechanics and the spine. They work through modifications all the time. There's pre-Pilates series for clients who aren't quite ready for the full exercises. All of that exists, okay, within a more classical Pilates program. So, like in Pilates Teacher Mastermind VIP, part of what I do is mentor fully trained Pilates teachers who then want to learn a little bit more about actually teaching classical Pilates. They want to see those exercises being done and taught. They want to learn what the transitions look like. They want to see and feel in their bodies what the difference is. They might want to learn the classical system on their own apparatus in their studios, even if it's not, Gratz or Pilates designs. Learn why things might be harder, why things might feel different, how to work with their equipment possibly in a different way. And that, I think, if you can't kind of immerse yourself in a studio official teacher training bridge, is the next best way to go. Is you find your mentor, you connect with that person, you start a program with them, and you start to build your knowledge base of the classical work and bridge towards it. The nice thing is that, number one, it's going to simplify your existence, because then you're going to be able to take all of those exercises that you've learned and that you may not have learned in a particular order, that you may not have learned in a particular systematic way. And suddenly you're going to have an order and you're going to have a systematic way of bringing exercises into the routine as clients need them. You're going to have hallmarks of what to look for in your clients in terms of strength, etc. You will also then be able to still do some of those contemporary variations on things that you've learned, but you'll understand that they are not in the system, and you'll have a better idea of kind of where to put them within the system. It's very interesting to me that, for example, I'll hear contemporary Pilates teachers all the time be like, how are they always working in that Pilates stance or that Pilates V? Doesn't it get tight in the rotators? And then, 2 sentences later, they're talking about how their clients' hips are starting to cramp up when they're doing the side lying clam and other external rotation series in a class. And I'm like, how do you think that side lying clams and rotations in that way are any better or necessarily that different in terms of what you're doing to the person's rotators than having the heels together and the toes a little bit apart? See what I mean? Like, this is where, for me, things get really fishy in some of the contemporary programs, because I'm like, you'll have people doing clam all day, and then you're going to say something about heels together, toes apart Pilates stance? No, that's not how any of this works. So I encourage you, if you are simply new to the Pilates teaching game and you're really looking for a program, to again consider where you want to teach, how you want to be teaching, and look for as comprehensive a program as you can. Number 2, if you are a contemporary trained Pilates teacher and you want to bridge and learn more about classical Pilates and you have the resources and the time, then certainly find a classical bridge studio program where you can go in and do that, or find an online mentor like me and start that work online. Which I actually think is the way to do it, because then you can work with the mentors you want to work with. You can still have your online community. You will still have, live classes and chats and Q&As and all of the things. You can still be observed teaching. And on your own time, you can then be able to watch all the videos, see the sequences, hear the cueing, watch people on the mat and on the apparatus going through the system and the exercises. And it will really help you understand what Pilates is. And then after that, you can take all of that extra stuff that you had handed to you that's not quite Pilates, but can be useful, and use it as needed with your clients. Okay, so if you guys have any questions about this, as always, reach out to me. You can DM me on all of the social medias. I'm Lynda Lippin, or Lynda Lippin Pilates everywhere. If you are a Pilates teacher and you would like a little more info on Pilates Teacher Mastermind VIP, please search out the Pilates Teacher Mastermind free group on Facebook. And then once you're in there, go into the guides and start to dig through all of the information that's within that group. And I really encourage you, if you can, to do that bridge work. And I don't encourage this from any political perspective. I just encourage this for your own knowledge, and also to help make it easier for you to work where you want to, teach where and how you want to, and really help your clients in the best ways possible. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I hope that it brings up some questions and some issues for you, which I am happy to talk to you about. If you have questions, again, if you have any ideas for shows that you would like me to do moving forward that might answer some of your questions, again, reach on out, either DM on social or reach out to me, Lynda at lyndalippin.com. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. If you enjoy the show, please go on to Spotify, the Apple Podcasts app, or Podchaser and leave a written rating and a written review and a star rating. I would really appreciate it. It helps the show continue to move up in the rankings online. Which then helps me get new sponsors, new advertisers, and better guests for you. And I have some interviews coming up within the next few weeks that are going to be really, really interesting for both Pilates clients and Pilates teachers. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.